The first pet I ever took care of was Lucy the hermit crab. At the age of 4, I went to my family with a litany of reasons why I was responsible enough to take in a pet, and they complied. My care for Lucy went deep. I studied her, listened to her burrowing at night. I'd let her crawl across my bedroom floor and place her on my arms for her to scuttle across. When she eventually died, I even delegated family members to write out various prayers and blessings that I recited at her funeral. Though she was the first, Lucy wouldn't be the only hermit I ever cared for. Over the years, hermits would continually fascinate me, both of the crab and human variety. I'd continue to shelter in hermit crabs in my home, and later on in college, I'd begin to research human mystic hermits on my own time. In my vocal studio, I would belt out musical cycles like the Hermit Songs by Samuel Barber, where I would paradoxically cry out to my packed and boisterous voice department, "Ah, to be all alone in a little cell with nobody near me. Beloved, that pilgrimage before the last pilgrimage to death." Never once as I sang these words or studied these crabs did I consider myself to be an actual hermit. I just always wondered what it would be like. These days, I am still decidedly not a hermit. But there are moments when the gleam of my computer screen reflects back at my face just so to make me wonder if I am in my own cloistered cell these days. These days I know the honey locusts that line the sidewalks of where I live better than I know my professors, better than I know my human neighbors. As I reflect back on this class of grace incarnate, I find myself thinking so much about the ways we view ourselves as individuals as intricately tied to how we relate to creation. I find myself mourning a sense of toxic individuality in this seminary year that has me feeling like I have to carry everything on my own. However, I know of a promised community, a promised ecological network here at OSTC that longs to embrace us. Though as we wait in faith for that embrace, still in my quasi-hermetic life, I confess I sometimes wonder, is this sense of disconnect at the hands of the pandemic? Or is it something deeper, something cultural, something theological? How can our sense of connection to the land encourage us to be in deeper community with each other? How can we come to see ourselves as connected to this earth, to this soil? The work that we have to do is not our own, but belonging to everyone. Despite my worries, I confess I still not am in despair. I am surrounded by holiness in every small thing. I study it in rocks and the dirt under my fingertips. I think about the cosmos in every leaf, and the wooden balconies of our apartments remind me of DNA strands spiraling to the sky. So I do not despair. Though I will say it is hard to feel this disconnect from the land and from each other. Some days I am screaming at God to remind me that those are the same thing. Some days I am screaming at God to scatter my language, confuse me, place me out into the world. Let me feel connected in that confusion. This is ecological, to scatter ourselves into connection, into creation, to realize that we are all creation. I must have faith that the opportunities and communities and hospitality I long for is still growing on a tree somewhere. If anything, this last year has taught me that God reveals God's self in our ecological relationships, in our care for one another, in our ability to recognize each other's struggle, suffering, and oppression as deeply rooted to the soil and waters of this earth, as something that affects every ounce of what it means to exist in God's image. When all those ecological relationships burrow into some kind of dormancy, we must practice remembering that God created us all. God created us all with everything we need, and when we deny that abundance, we deny being created with this common mission to serve, to love, to grow, to question, to be confused, to learn, to love each other deeply and queerly and ecologically, not as individuals, but in some larger network that recognizes all of creation as something worth loving and as something God made, intending for us to love it back.
So majestic.